spending time in the field, understanding what the conviction is, and then believing that what we're going to build, the customer is going to use. But I wouldn't go and pick something out and just say and see it. And I said, I think this is going to work. Like I know it's going to work because we spend so much time with users to get that feedback and their thoughts on it.
Thousands of companies show up to sell their technology to the U.S. Department of Defense each year, but so few will transition from proof of concept to true production across the valley of death. The select few who do, their stories are rarely told. Until now. I'm Noah Scheinbaum, and this is Crossing the Valley.
Palantir Technologies is now the highest valued defense company in the world. Palantir's market cap recently surpassed that of Lockheed Martin. The company's at the forefront of the national security conversation, and they're unabashedly pro-America in their messaging. But still, little is known about how they actually operate. So at the Reagan National Defense Forum, I sat down with Palantir's Shannon Clark, head of defense growth, and who's been at Palantir for over a decade, to learn a little bit more. Shannon is the rare person who's had incredible success in both the public and private sectors. She began her career as a counterterrorism analyst, later serving as the special assistant to the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and then as director of counterterrorism policy on the White House National Security Council staff. Today, Shannon leads the company's work on Project Maven, and she spends most of her time focused on new innovation efforts, determining what products and technologies make it to market. I had an absolute blast talking to Shannon, and I hope you enjoy. All right, everyone, we're back here at the Reagan National Defense Forum, and I'm thrilled to be joined by Shannon Clark, the head of defense growth at Palantir Technologies, small little company you may have heard of, recently became the most valuable defense company in the world. That's kind of crazy to say.
Yeah.
He still, how does that feel?
Yeah, no, it feels good, especially to walk in here this weekend and say, saying that. Yeah.
Yeah,
great.
I think there's some memes around Carp's walking around here with like the Conqueror's belt right around.
He's the man of the people still, though. I will tell you that.
It's fantastic. Shannon, you've had an unbelievable career. And really, I think both in government, what you've achieved, and now in the 12 years at Palantir.
Yeah,
right?
a little over 12, yeah.
That's incredible. I want to start with you, and we'll talk about some of the other interesting things and the interesting projects you've been a part of over the years. But starting in the government side, it is actually pretty rare to find somebody who comes up through the government kind of civil service and government service path and then goes on to find wild amounts of success in the private sector. Talk to us about your early days as an analyst and like how did you expect to be in the private sector at this point?
Well, first and foremost, thanks for having me, and it's great to see you.
Sorry, there's 6 questions for you.
No, but I love it. You're like, it's like my children at home. Like right now, the stage they're at of just asking me a million things at once. So I'm totally
you can
used to
answer
it.
What you want.
Yeah. And then usually the answers I give them are very short. No, first of all, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to see you again. But I think, the answer bluntly is no. Did I expect to be here? But I don't even know if I knew where I would be. I was really, really happy to be in DC for my undergraduate years. And I think the education that I had and the Jesuit education I had at Georgetown and the roundedness there was really important. But the thing that was the most critical to where I am today was really what happened my junior year of Georgetown, which was I watched the Pentagon burning on 9/11 from my patio window and my patio in the back of my apartment at Georgetown. I think a lot of people have their 9/11 stories of where they were. And for me, it really shaped my desire to be part of the national security apparatus. And at the time, I didn't know if that meant I would be an analyst. I didn't know if that meant to be a foreign service officer. I definitely wasn't thinking in 2001 that would be, working in a technology company that was doing everything they could to defend, America and the West. But that was the most pivotal thing in my life that brought me to working in the government and working as an analyst. And then again, when I pivoted and decided to move into the private sector, like the underlying question I had was, what can I still do that will, help the United States? It will be part of national security, that I can wake up every day and know that I'm going to work making our country safer. So I think that while I didn't know what form that would be, that was always the general thesis. And to your point, as a civil servant, it's a little different, right? Like if you go to take an oath and you become part of the military, I think it's very clear that that's what you're taking on. But I don't think I knew. I didn't know that. I was like almost too young and naive to know that that was, at least for the first part, what I was doing. But then I think is kind of the private sector has really allowed me to still be able to do that. It's one of the most gratifying things I could hope for in my life.
Yeah, I mean, programs called Crossing the Valley, we typically talk about the companies crossing the
Yeah.
valley, but I think there's a human valley in this too, which
Yeah.
is a lot of the work I do around defense tech jobs is talking to civil servants and
Yep.
military veterans who are thinking about what their second chapter and their third chapter look like. And so I'm curious what that process was for
Yeah.
you to go from deep government expertise to I'm going to go join this
Yeah.
startup that's working in space.
Well, it was, I think the beauty of like what I'm always, I feel so fortunate about where my career went and like the kind of like I always think of like Tarzan of like you're jumping from one limb to another and like you're hoping that there's something there to grab onto. And I just feel like the beauty of what happened to me was after my time at the White House on the national security staff, I really decided to go back to grad school. And it was a little later for most people to go back to graduate school. In reality, I feel like I was still pretty young, but now looking back at the time, I remember I felt older.
Yep.
And taking that time away from DC to really think about what it was that I wanted to do. I mean, I remember like showing up those first few days at grad school and like afraid to talk to so many people because I still like was like getting over just being out of an environment where I wasn't in a skiff anymore and I didn't have a security clearance for a second and I was just like,
Like,
what's
no, I
going
will
on?
not tell you my favorite
Yeah,
food.
no, I literally there was like, there would be like my classmates would be foreigners and I was like, am I gonna have to write this, up and record this on my SF-86? I was so nervous. And I took that time away, which was the most valuable thing I could have done because I think had I left the job that I was at the White House and would have thought about going back directly into DOD, I wouldn't have really been as imaginative as I would about like what I could possibly do. And I remember there were some people that had left and I was like, well, what are you doing in the private sector? And they're like, well, I'm going to go work for ExxonMobil. I'm going to be like a security analyst. And so they were almost taking literally what they were doing as an analyst, but just doing it in the private sector. And I thought, that's not really what I want to do. And it seemed so limiting, but I just had no idea what else was out there.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Please.
So being away and having that time to really like step back and say, okay, what else can we do? Was so helpful to me because it just showed me that the world was, the world was my oyster. And like my analytic mind didn't have to just be that I was some sort of intel or security analyst, but it could be used towards other things. And so, but I've also made this point before, and I think it's really, really important. In 2012, when I joined Palantir, there was not this giant ecosystem of defense startups, right? Like it was like maybe I interviewed to potentially work at Google and their public sector. And I thought about working for like, some like other contractors, but there was no defense based ecosystem. Like, and
Nothing.
all of these people that I see here and like some of the amazing I'm so proud of some of the amazing Palantirians that have since gone on and founded their own companies. Like, it wasn't like I had my choice of
Yeah.
where I wanted to go. And did I want to be involved in like an AI company or did I want a hardware company, a software company? That just didn't happen. So, my journey to Palantir was when someone said to me, told me about what the mission was, and I thought, again, kind of to my earlier point, like I can wake up tomorrow and go work for the software company that's building technology that I would have used as an intelligence analyst to help, protect Americans, to help save our lives. And I thought, there's nothing, okay, I'll go take a shot at it. But um, I often joke that you could Google Palantir and you could maybe find one article. I remember someone actually sent me a PDF that had like I don't know, it was Newsweek. It was like something, an article, and they're like, here's like the only thing you can find on Palantir.
It was the deliberatively secretive
Yeah.
age.
And it was like our press strategy was no press.
Yeah.
And so I mean, I still to this day, people know who it is. And I think now just the success we've had in the last 2 years, people do. But it was so hard that it was like, I don't, I'm very lucky. I'm very fortunate that I found it, but I don't, it was just, there was no one that even knew about it. Unless you were maybe on the Stanford campus, which, I think that's your alma mater. So maybe you heard about us. And you were walking around, University Avenue in downtown Palo Alto, and you probably saw, a young engineer wearing a Palantir t-shirt. You weren't going to see that in Washington, D.C. So that was kind of the beginning of of where it came from.
And what was, I mean, we'll the early days are, I think it's got to be fun to kind of reminisce and think of what it was. What was the first job you had there? And I know titles were not a big
Yeah,
thing.
no, the first job I had was we had just kicked off. I spent the first few months like really learning the product, and we were just kicking off our work with the FBI, and we had to field to all of the field offices throughout the United States. And so I traveled almost every week with our team that was doing these giant user trainings at all of so I was going to Miami and San Diego and LA, like all where all the major FBI field offices are for like 3 months.
These are bad hardship posts, I'm
Yes,
sure. Yeah.
yes. But no, and honestly, it was a lot of work because you were sitting there with the analysts and they were like, okay, how do I use this? And it was like analysts of all age. And I had been used to working with like a cohort of like super young, nimble analysts. And it was like, okay, there might be like an FBI agent in there and they were trying to figure it out. And spending time with um, the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, which also had Palantir. And now you're talking about like people that, I mean, blue collar folks that are like trying to use the platform. And I spent a lot of time training, like just learning the product. And then my first project was with the city of Chicago, starting in like January. So the Chicago winter.
Famously great time. To be in
Yeah,
Chicago,
it's like I love Chicago, just not in January.
Yeah.
And it was trying to find corruption in the contract system that they had. And so
It's like shooting fish in a barrel.
you know what? I probably am. Yeah, I'm probably not allowed
Sorry,
to comment. I'm probably not
Chicago
allowed
politics is near and dear to my heart.
No,
Yeah.
but it was like it was just three of us, and we were there working on this, and it was, I think Rahm Emanuel maybe had just taken office, and it was really, really fascinating but it was hard, but it was really cool and I kind of learned more of the product, and now how do we apply it to finding these anomalies. But my favorite, so I think of those two as like my warm-ups, but my real first project was when I started this project that we did with the Navy SEALs in Coronado. I was living in DC and I flew back and forth to Coronado, which that was a true hardship, for a year every week, integrating all of the Navy SEAL data into Palantir. And that meant like all of the BUDS data, all of the Navy, like the data that they had once you left BUDS, and helping them like understand their readiness. And it was incredible project. And because I think I had spent so much time working in the SOCOM community in my government civilian life, like it was near and dear to my heart. Also going like your drive being across the Coronado Bridge every day was like in the beautiful sunlight, some days of San Diego was not a hardship. It was really beautiful, but it was the best time. It was one of the best projects I worked on at Palantir, and I was really proud of it. And the engineer that I worked on it with, who like taught me everything I knew about Palantir, is one of my best friends today. So, and it really kicked off kind of my role then from there to being the lead of our SOCOM work for like the next 5 years, where my goal was to like get Palantir to every SOCOM body, in that organization. So it was like really that was the kickoff to kind of the first part of my career of really working with SOCOM.
What part was it immediately apparent to you, like this is a game changer, this is working, or did it take some time? Like at what point did you say, oh my God, it's kind of a big deal?
Yeah. I think it really did actually take that first 9 months of me trying to really understand it. And I think it's also really because part of that journey was really understanding how I could contribute at Palantir. And that took me a while as well. I mean, when I started my first days, and like they used to send you out to Palo Alto for like 3 weeks to get training and learn the back end, the front end. I was the only female in a class of 9 engineers. And like one of our first tasks was to set up a server. And I remember sitting there like, they're like, and now you're going to SSH into this box. And I was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, I'm not an engineer. And I had this guy that was sitting next to me, and he was like, I got you. Like, I'm going to help you figure this out. And I just remember thinking like, I don't understand. Like, do they think that I'm an engineer? Like, I don't think that's why they hired me. And we went to this happy hour at the end of the 3 weeks again, I'm going to probably say at Old Pro, which you probably remember from your days there, which sadly no longer exists, I don't think.
I've heard.
Yeah. So, yeah. And
Old Pro, Nut House, it's all gone.
It's all gone. And you can't ride the bull anymore. They asked me what the questions were in my interview. And they were like, well, when they were telling me like the questions they got, like they were comparing coding questions, as engineers like to do. And like, what did you get? And then they were like, well, what questions?
Put me in the wrong class.
Yeah, no, I'm like, I'm literally, I mean, the phone calls to my parents that week, I'm sure I wish they had taped them because they were quite interesting. And then they asked me what questions I got, and I told them, like, oh, and I was just giving them like the scenario questions, and they looked at me and they were just all deadpan, and I was like, what? And they were like, how did you answer those? And I was like, what are you talking about, guys? There was like, I didn't say they were easy, but I was like, oh, you would say this, and they were just still like slackjawed. And they said, we would never have been able to answer those. And I realized at that moment, and when I had to give a demo and I saw their demo skills, that I was like, okay, I understand why I'm here. Like, I'm going to help this company with the strategy. I am going to help them, like, talking to customers, because these engineers are really smart. But some of them were just, like, they did not, they didn't know how to talk. Or they would just, you put them in front of a general or an admiral and they would just, not know what to do. I mean,
Different superpowers.
different superpowers.
Yeah.
As Sham always loves to talk about. And I think at that moment there in the beginning, I realized kind of what I could do. It took me a full year to figure out how to apply that at Palantir, really. And then, but there are so many days but I think that time in Coronado, I was like, this is a game changer. There's so much we can do with this. People need this. Like, I saw kind of like what was in place in a way that I maybe had never really thought about on like, even when I was an analyst, like, this is going to change and speed up like how much faster and better and more efficient people can do with real data. I think it was those days in Coronado that really it convinced me that like this was something. Did I know that it would be what it is? Again, I feel like I was young and probably a little naive. No, but I always believed in it, and I believed in its people.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think there's conviction is conviction. It's not necessarily about the magnitude. It's about the the fit and the purpose. And you guys clearly had that from early on. I think that it is amazing to me. We've had a couple of guests on the show who are Palantirians, or alums, and to me, the greatest sign of success, when even to this day, when you talk about, hey, should I join this company or that company? One of the things I talk to people about all the time is, well, even if the company flops, will it be a network that you're glad to have invested in? Like, are there people there that you think are going to be great teachers, great mentors, great colleagues, and potential future founders that you want to work with?
Yeah.
The answer is yeah. I mean, it'd be great if you have both the market and the people.
Yeah.
But hedge. If you don't believe, if you don't definitely have one, it's.
Well, you've probably seen, I mean, just walking around here, I was trying to count this morning how many Palantirians that aren't here on behalf of Palantir, but are here in some other capacity, and what they're doing, and whether they're like general counsel at another company, or they're head of, government defense, or they've started their own companies. The Palantir alumni, it's like, it's not shocking to me, but the other thing that I love about it is I love all of them. And I'm so proud of all of them. And there's no, vitriol or animosity. So it's like, oh, you left and went and did your own thing. It's like this incredible pride of like, oh my gosh, you went and started this company that you believed in. And it makes sense because when you were at Palantir, you were passionate about X, and now you're going and building that thing. And, the companies that are backing them, that are just, I think, I wonder about other companies, like when they were in early days. I live in Seattle now, and so a lot of my neighbors are, work at Amazon or Microsoft, and obviously I can only imagine the number of people that have left those companies and started, other companies. But in this space in particular, it's so important because so many of those people left, and then they were like, I'm going to go build something that's also going to do something in defense, that's going to, again, protect Americans and focus on, national security. And that, I think, is why we still really embrace all of those alumni, because we're so incredibly proud of the fact that they're continuing what we believe in and focus on the mission.
Absolutely. And this is why culture isn't just values on a wall. Like it's the actions, and it's how you treat, it's these formative moments. Like, how do we treat when someone early leaves? Is this a future partner we're going to work with, or is this someone we're going to shun forever? I think it's super powerful.
And I also think, someone that was, recently departing, someone said to me, oh, how do you feel about that person leaving? And I said, I'm actually incredibly proud of the people that they have like built, that people they have mentored below them. Like, I'm excited for the next, the next chapter of what they have built. And so it's not like, oh my gosh, we can't survive beyond this person. It's like the incredible people that they have recruited and then, been mentors to. It's like, that part, it's like, I can't really begrudge them because I'm really excited about, the teams that they've built and that I get to continue to work with those teams, even if it's not a singular person
Absolutely.
anymore.
Yeah, that's great. Great people bring in great people. Um, we're gonna. I think it's a great segue to some of what you're doing today, which is as those great people are out in the
Yeah.
field doing their work, meeting with customers, having new product ideas. One of the things that I don't think folks kind of have a sense that Palantir has been successful, and Palantir takes strong views on different issues in the world,
Yeah.
led by your CEO, and I think that's great. One area that I'm not sure we've explored as much, and I'm excited to talk to you about, is how Palantir makes decisions,
Yeah.
specifically around the allocation of scarce, although increasingly less scarce, resources and time, right, and human capital. And so, in your role on kind of the business or the market side of new
Yeah.
products and research and development, can you give us some sense of, like, one, first off, what does that role actually entail,
Yeah.
and how do you do that job?
Yeah. Well, first of all, scarcity with people is like we run a lean, so
Yeah.
there is some scarcity, like we run a very lean company. I say that, like, I mean, people forget that we're less than 4,000 people. Um, and so when we think about what we're going to invest in, we are meticulous about it because we're like, we don't just have, 30 people. And I remember, like, I think when I graduated from college and I had to spend some time working at a consulting company before I went into the government, I was waiting for my clearance to go through and all the lovely government bureaucracy and tape. Um, I remember people like, okay, we might win this project and therefore we need to go hire a bunch of people. And that's like not how we think about Palantir. Like, we hire really good people
Hmm.
and we don't hire them for a specific thing, right? We hire them as really good people because we might say they're going to go work in the commercial space or they might come and work in the government space, but it's
Yep.
not like we hire them and we're like, you're going to go work on this project that we might win, right?
Yep.
Um, so when we think about what we build and we invest in, we have to have that mind of like, we're have conviction in it because we are going to put the best people on it, and therefore, like, it has to be something that we believe is going to grow. For me, the where we get most of where we get those ideas and where we get that conviction is we're in the field. And I think when I talk to other companies, they always say to me, whether it's someone that's like starting out or whatever, and they like think about Palantir's forward deployed engineer model, they're like, it seems to, like, I just didn't even almost realize until maybe 2 years ago how much people actually know about that, because they're like, you have modeled that to be like the best thing that any of us could probably take away and learn.
Hmm.
And so when we get ideas about what we're going to move forward with and what we're going to invest in, a lot of that comes from our time in the field with the users. And I think, for instance, there was a long time when Palantir didn't have like this amazing map functionality. Like,
Hmm.
we had this workspace and we had like these charts you could build, and we didn't have a map. And we had one of our early hack weeks, someone built a map and we thought, okay, we'll bring this into the platform. Like, people might want to see things geospatially. But in 2016, when we built Gaia, which is our map capability, it was because, we knew what was going on in Iraq at the time. We knew that the special forces that were out there needed something geospatially. And we literally sent 2 people out forward and then engineers fully after that to invest in it. And we had conviction, and that conviction paid off because that's one of our, on the government side, like our biggest tools today. Similarly, when we kicked off our work on Project Maven, we knew that there needed to be a map function, but we also knew that there needed to be a video capability because some of the initial work that we were doing had computer vision detections, and it needed to be laid over video. And we had, again, kind of what during one hack week had built this video, but then we went out forward and those engineers spent time with, and they're like, yes, we need a video. We need the video and the map to be able to be interoperable and all those things. And we learned, and then we were like, okay, we are going to invest in this. Today, I think we think about that. And I think we're better and we're more ruthless about when we decide whether or not there's conviction. But when we think about the world of like mixed reality now and putting things like even further to the edge on a headset, I have a lot of conviction in that. Like, I think that, there's obviously some large existing programs out there right now, I've asked, and others that have some sort of conviction about it. But I think there's more. And I think that as we experiment more with some of the services on that, like, that's kind of where we look next. And we're like, okay, we have conviction because we know that there's going to be a capability that people are going to want purely, like, really, really at the edge, like even going further. So, but a lot of that is like just spending time in the field, understanding what the conviction is, and then believing that what we're going to build, the customer is going to use. But I wouldn't go and pick something out and just say and see it. And I said, I think this is going to work. Like, I know it's going to work because we spend so much time with users to get that feedback and their thoughts on it.
I think that, again, this is coming back to kind of culture
Yeah.
of discovery and things like that. I'm curious, is there a process around that today? I recognize, like, what it might have been a few years ago
Yeah.
versus where you are today. Is there a process for kind of ensuring that folks are sharing those ideas back
Oh yeah.
with decision
That's
makers?
what, and it's one of the things I think that we've still succeeded at. And I think sometimes I don't want to say you worry, but you wonder, as you get larger, are things going to become less transparent? And I think the beauty about Palantir is we are so utterly transparent, and because we are so flat that there's no bureaucracy of like, engineer goes in the field, sees this product, then it gets entered into here, our product feature, a feature request gets entered into here, and then this has to get approved here, and then here, and then here. And it's like, it's not like that. I think the amazing part about it is engineer goes in the field, sees something, believes that they need that, emails everyone else. Like if I'm using the co-coms as an example, and someone at UCOM sees something, one of the engineers there, and then they come back and the people at Indo-PACOM say, oh yeah, we need that too, because they're sharing so much of what they learn. And that has really stayed true today, which I think, you just don't know when you become bigger whether or not that will persist, but it has, because I think everyone sees the value in it. And then there's other things that don't win, right? Someone comes back and someone says, we need this, and we're like, hey, like, how much do you really need that? Is there anything else that we could do? Because it's only actually going to be applicable to you.
Yeah.
And, we do, there are, it's that feedback amongst each other and amongst the engineers is really what drives, and myself is like really what drives what we move forward with. But it's not, what I love about it is there isn't a bureaucracy for it. It doesn't go to a JIRA ticket that then we all have to like sign off on the end of the month. I mean, I don't think I could work at a place where it was like that. Thank
This is
God.
impressive. I mean, you guys have I know 4,000 is not the biggest, but it's a lot of people. I
Yeah.
know that other companies have laid off 4 times that number and are still smaller.
Yeah.
But anyway, is email's the communication system of record?
Well,
Is
listen,
that
email is, but
Slack, Teams?
I just tell people, but I'm like, if you Slack me and then you attach a quip and whatever, you've lost me. So, but I mean, I appreciate that my team knows I will respond to every email but Slack is no, I mean, I was almost going to say these kids, but that's derogatory. I mean, it's like Slack, and I think is so valuable, especially when you're in the fields and you're quickly. I mean, I don't have every single engineer's phone number in my phone, and so Slack is a really important way to communicate with the team. But we also do write field reports. Like I went on the plane here. It's just reading a readout of like, hey, this is, when we are out in the field and we're meeting, with a Marine Corps unit, and the team comes back and says, this is what I see. And everyone reads those. I mean, Sham reads those. And I think that everyone knows that Sham and Aki read those. And so they were like, we're going to put these out because then we're going to be truthful. And that's the most important thing. Is Sham is always like, do tell us the good, the bad, and the ugly. If I'm, I think early on I learned, if you write a flowery report just because you think it's going to make him feel better, it's actually going to make him feel worse. And he's probably never going to trust you again, because he's going to think that you're not going to be brutally honest. But we're very, very good about sharing still. And I think that we've continued to ingrain that in the culture.
I'm going to ask one more question on this, and then we can move to another topic. But it is, because I think the process of organization building is really interesting. And even how you scale yourself, scale your organization is really meaningful. So is there any kind of a regular process around how this is all considered, or is it all still kind of like ad hoc, as needed? Like only when people are begging for something do we give it oxygen and attention?
It's not a begging thing necessarily. It's just because it's really let me see if I can give you a more. So each of our teams is really set up where we have a lead, like if you're, and we have a lead that's kind of leading the whole thing, and then we have a technical lead, and then someone like myself is kind of there, I'm like involved in the strategy of it all. And we just meet routinely and regularly enough that it just doesn't feel like a process. So
it's a cadence of communication.
Yeah, that it's so, I mean, I sometimes our customers will say, of course, everything, that everyone on your team knows everything we just said in like a matter of 10 minutes. But it's like, yeah, because we think it's important to share everything. There's no stovepipe, because there is no hierarchy in a way where any that, like I said, like the most junior person on the team that maybe just joined 6 months ago should know how I feel about the strategy and where the direction of the thing is, and they should know how the senior engineer feels. So I know it's like, I think all people always want to be like, but there is a process. And even in the last year, there have been a few people that have joined, and everyone tried to tell them before they joined, well, it's very flat and there's not a lot of processes. And they were like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then they joined and they were like, holy crap, you were right. There
Mm.
isn't, it's flat and there's no, and sometimes maybe that creates like some sort of chaos because someone, but it's good chaos. The other thing I think about it, and this is kind of a little bit tangential, but I think important, is to Dr. Karp's comment of like, he's created a colony of artists and that's what he supports. The thing about the other reason that it works is because everyone knows what each other is good at and also what they're bad at. And they trust that when, someone says, hey, I think we should do this, and that person is like really good at what that thing is or what that suggestion is, there's just an unwavering amount of trust in, okay, that person's right.
Mm.
And whether that's like my contracting officer and he tells me the strategy of how he thinks we should approach a contract, or like an engineer or techno, it's like I just have extreme faith in what they do because they're a craftsman, they're an artist in everything they do. And I'm not a contracting officer. I don't know all the ins and outs of things, but I have to put extreme faith in them. And so
Yeah.
whether it's a decision like that or what we should invest in, I really, really believe that we're cultivating the people that are the best at that. And so I really trust their decisions.
Comes back to people.
Yes, it
Comes
does.
back to people. Um, no, it is. Look, at some point you have to accept it because I think a lot of us who are on the outside, you look at it, and you're like, well, there's got to be something there. And you're like,
Yeah.
no, this is
Yeah.
really what it is. This is how it works. I want to make sure we spend a little bit of time talking about one of your biggest programs and current portfolios,
Yeah.
which is Project Maven, and
Mhm.
it's been really fun to see over the last few months as this has become a little bit more public. I mean, interestingly, you said you interviewed with Google out of grad school,
Yeah.
and ironically,
Yes.
you guys
Yes.
are very much on. You took the opposite path, and
We
now
did.
Google is back, and they're working with defense, and
Yes,
we
for
don't shame
sure.
them anymore.
Everyone's excited about it.
Everybody's happy about it. Project Maven, talk to us about what this has meant to Palantir as a company
Yeah.
and to you as a leader in the company over the last, almost 10 years now at this
Yeah.
point, right?
So yeah, we started work on Project Maven in 2018.
Okay, so not
Yeah.
quite 10,
So
so
yeah,
6.
6. I'm like, I cannot do simple addition anymore. Um, well, first of all, I think it's the most important work that we do at the company.
Hmm.
I think Dr. Karp would agree. I mean, he mentioned it this morning in his talk, and he mentions it, oftentimes to our commercial customers and government customers alike. Um, to me, what it has meant is really bringing the best and brightest and cutting edge AI to the warfighter in a way that they actually understand how to use it. They can use it. They can reap the benefits of AI. Um, we started as a small pilot in 2018. I don't. I think we had conviction because we believed in the fearless leader that Colonel Kukor, who was the man that created Project Maven, and we knew him from his time with the Marine Corps, and we believed that he was a pathfinder, which he is and was. And I think I don't know that we knew we would be where we are today, but I think
Mm.
over the last year, just seeing every day how many more people say that they want Project Maven and that they want Maven Smart System is really, I'm really proud of that.
Yeah.
And I think as a company, we're really proud of that. I mean, I often joke that I can go away from my computer for a few hours and come back, and there's another request in there where someone says, hey, we have this and we want more of it, or, how do we scale this? I think if you were to go up to every combatant commander here and ask them about Project Maven, they would all tell you that they're utilizing it.
Yeah.
And, or almost every. There's a few places that it's not, and hopefully that'll change in 2025. And I just think it's, we understand that software is the decision advantage and that it's going to be the most important thing that we can invest in. And we obviously, as a software company, believe in that. And I think that any way that we can contribute to providing the combatant commands and the military departments, and the services with Project Maven, like we're going to do and we're going to invest in. And I think that, Dr. Karp has been extremely supportive and has always said to me, like, I will do, whatever you need. I will, talk to whomever to defend how we, help to, to scale this at other places. And I think that is, I always know that he's willing, and Shamanaki, or and others are willing to listen, because it's the thing that we're really most proud of in terms of how it supports them, how we can support the mission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's actually really important to just say that, like, Maven was not preordained for success.
No.
And there were many times
No.
between 2018 and today where people were talking about it being defunded,
Yep.
being discontinued. Like, it wasn't always on
Yep.
a glide path.
Yep. Or it was, it moved over to NGA, and there was a
Right.
transition, and everyone wondered if it would survive. I mean, this, when we joined and started to work on Project Maven, it was a bunch of computer vision models that were on a computer, and legacy systems like within each of the services that were just kind of showing dots on a map. And you would show up, and when we, like, before we built everything, and we kind of went out to see what current state was, and it would be on a computer in the corner, or it would be in like a closet in a skiff. And you would ask the person, like, is anyone using this? And they were like, we're trying to. And I don't want to stand here and say we're like the great saviors of the program, because we're not, because there's so many people that contribute to it.
But what changed? Yeah.
But what changed is that we worked with all those vendors to bring it in, and to bring, the most important thing we did was we integrated all of this other data that actually was seen in parallel to, and was part of what you would then kind of see in the Maven Smart system with these, at the very beginning, computer vision models. And so I always say, I mean, it sounds so simple, but like, you went from seeing dots on a map to seeing a dot on a map, but now the context behind what that dot was. Like, that dot told you at the beginning, it was like 3 classes. It was like, was it a person? Was it a building? Or was it a vehicle?
Yep.
And then it became, okay, well, then it was like, when we could bring in all this data and we could start doing all these things, it was like, okay, were there people there yesterday? No. Okay, what did the change detection look over time? What time of day were those people there? But then also, like, tell me everything I need to know about where this place is. Like, you're putting a dot on a map that says this is the building. Is there other reporting that we know about this building? Is this in Afghanistan, and we've raided this house before, and therefore would like know that so-and-so lived here? Or is this like a helicopter landing zone that we've landed at before, and like it didn't work out so well? Or, all these things. And so I think when we brought data integration to it, which sounds so unsexy and so not cool, that made it more meaningful, and people were like, oh, this makes sense to me now.
Can we call it AI?
Yeah. There was like, it made so much more sense. They were like, we can use this, like, because not only is it dots, but it's like actually telling us something meaningful. We can see change detection. And that was just the very first thing that we did with computer vision. Fast forward to today, where they're using Project Maven for things like contested logistics. And that is critical, right? Because I think we always talk about, people, it's like, okay, you can understand what your enemy looks like and stuff like that. But like, what do you understand about your ammunition? What do you understand about your fuel resupply? All of those things are a critical part of it. How do you apply AI to that? So I think we are so excited that it's not just about like the intel piece. It's not just about the operations piece. Now it's the readiness, the logistics, and bringing all of that into it. So, I think, I mean, I always had hope that it would become what it is. But it's like, it's just in this momentum phase right now. It's just a really proud moment for us. And we want to continue to support it and give it to as many, I say soldier, airmen, Marines, and I say to guardsmen and women, guardians, excuse me, that we can, the joint force. Yeah, that we can.
It's a really unique success story.
Yeah.
Do you think the government is learning lessons from that? So, like, are you seeing evidence of taking... Let me just ask an open-ended question. I'm not leading the witness here.
Yeah.
What do you think the government has learned from Project Maven?
I think they've learned like field to learn. I think they've all realized, like, listen, we have to start somewhere. And so we have to deploy this, and we have to learn. And like, even now, when we meet with a combatant commander, and they talk about, like, they just know, like, everything about it may not work on day one. Like, if we're going to add some sort of capability, but they're willing to invest, and they're willing to invest their people, because they know the only way that it's going to get better is if we do that.
Yeah.
And that we're going to work so rapidly, and the government's going to work so rapidly. And it's not just Palantir. It's all of these other AI companies that want to be involved, or some of the imagery companies are like, that if you give us the feedback, that we will iterate faster than you can, and I think that it's always surprising to them, like, how quickly that we're moving, and how much faster we move. But it's like, no, we want to do that. And if you give us the space to do it, we will. So I think that, that's the lessons learned that they have, is like, okay, if we give some here, we give feedback, we will run with that feedback. And again, the we is broader than Palantir.
Yeah.
That we will run with that feedback and the life cycle, and we will improve this. And you will see those changes in days and weeks, not years, from like a large program was built with like these really large requirements that you can't get after, which I'm sure you're very familiar with.
I'm not sure we can overstate how important that is.
Yeah.
I mean, I think about the value of, Palantir going public and signaling to investors that money can be made here. Well,
Yeah.
Project Maven delivering downrange effects to warfighters.
Yeah.
The impact of that in helping government move towards a different acquisition model for software, it's, I think, on par. I mean, that's really, really great to hear.
Well, I think that I really am proud of the fact that it's not just Palantir, and that because I love meeting with other companies that are providing some exquisite technology that we don't do.
Yeah.
And then we never want.
Here.
Yeah, many of them are here that we never want to do because it's not, to me, that doesn't speak poorly of Palantir. It's just that it's like, it actually speaks well of Palantir because we have the recognition of, we're not going to go do that thing. Like I'm never going to go build a satellite. I'm never going to go, to get this exquisite imagery that some of our imagery providers have. I'm never going to go build a data labeling company, that some of our other friends have. Or I'm probably not going to build, a model that's going to be used in the same way that some of these modeling companies have built. There's just so many, and there's so many other pieces to it, right? That I think that's where, and I think that these other companies want to work with Palantir because they actually understand that we don't want to do those things, but that they can offer a piece of it and then be part of that ecosystem that we're talking about here.
You all are walking the walk there with the Fed Start program and other things. You're going to invest in the ecosystem. Hopefully we can have another conversation, maybe bring some others in on that one as well in the future. Shannon, this has been fantastic. I think we could probably go another hour, but I got to let you get going.
Thank you.
Let's end on this. What does the future hold for Palantir, and what are you excited about for the industry and ecosystem right now?
Yeah, I think, I go back to the almost like, I don't know what we don't know. Like as I was we were talking about, in the very beginning and, even just off camera, I don't know that Joe Lonsdale or Alex Karp or young Peter Thiel would have told you at the time that we would be working in, like I said, for, a largest oil and gas company in the world and, one of the largest plane manufacturers in the world. And I don't think when I started that I thought we would be doing readiness and logistics. Like I thought we just were doing counterterrorism and intel. And then I was like, oh, we could do ops. Okay, that makes sense. Like we should be doing operations because it's so close. And so I almost don't even know what the future is because I think that it's endless. And I think that, we're only going to have more data and people are only going to have larger data challenges. And so I think that like what we're able to do, obviously the world of, generative AI has exploded and we're so excited and we feel like we were really ready to meet that moment. But I'm excited for like what other use cases we continue to see, the ones that I don't even know today. And I sat at this user summit, or this first user summit for all of the folks from all across that were using Maven. And I was just listening to them and like, they have so many ideas because they're building within the platform. And so I think a lot of the future is like seeing what more of these use cases are, but then also the users themselves building in the platform and becoming like these amazing engineers that are wanting to do it themselves, because that is also like a very prideful moment for us too. Yeah. So
maybe we'll see Palantir in every pocket.
Yes,
Palantir for
yes,
consumers.
I hope so.
We're gonna,
you never know.
That's
you never
news
know.
right
I know.
there.
Yeah,
Palantir
you should go tell Dr. Clark that.
Shannon, this has been fantastic.
Thanks for having me.
It's great seeing you. Thanks
yeah,
for
it's good
making
to see you too. Thank you.